Hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible. Hello and welcome to the session 2 of the transport sessions as part of the Asia-Leds Partnership Forum 2021. This session will be focusing on enabling environment for electric mobility in public transport with a focus on developing countries. If I can have the next slide. As we move on, I'd like to just mention a few housekeeping rules. This session is being recorded. It is being displayed live on YouTube, and the recording will be available in future if anybody's interested. During the session, participants are requested to share your questions using the Q&A function. And as we start the Q&A session itself, you could raise your hand and you could be invited to share questions verbally. There are options of translation that are available. You could use them if you prefer in Chinese and Bahasa Indonesia. Also, the same is being used through Wahova app. So if there are any details, you could look at what is mentioned here and join the session. Moving forward, I think I'm very happy to invite the moderator for today's session. We have with us Mr. Nicola Merimurek, who is representing SLOCAT, is a data and research analyst there, leading data research. He's also focusing on ongoing electric mobility activities in the region, tracking trends and looking at how targets are being addressed by the countries in the region. So welcome, Nicola, and over to you for moderating the session.
Great, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me very well without any issues. So to show the agenda, maybe next slide, please. If I have, or next, the agenda slide, please. So kind of the theme of today's second session of today's Transport Day, the Asia-Leds Forum, is enabling environment for electric mobility in public transport with a focus on developing countries. As you can see, there are several, we have 6 speakers in total for this session. So you will hear from local bus initiatives up to like national policy ambitions and up to regional communities of practice, of exchange, and so on. I will introduce each of the speakers before they start their presentation. And just important also, like the objective of the session is to share ideas from successfully implemented electric mobility projects and ongoing initiatives in the Asia-Pacific region. The focus is on reducing emissions and transitioning towards net zero pathways. I welcome everyone and encourage you, as Ashish was saying, please write your questions in the Q&A box, and we will answer them in the segment towards the end where we talk about the Q&A session. And on the next slide, does it work? Yeah, so here again, you can see the 6 speakers for today. I will each of them introduce very briefly at the start of each respective presentation. But first, in order to set the scene, I also want to a little bit present a couple of slides and show you. Please, next slide. I want to show you a couple of why we actually discuss e-mobility, or like why we actually discuss electric buses, while there are so many other transport modes that could be discussed during such a forum. So first, as here I work for the SLOCAT Partnership on Sustainable Low Carbon Transport, which is an international multi-stakeholder partnership that enables collaborative knowledge and action for sustainable low carbon transport, and tries to bring the voice of the movement into international climate change and sustainability processes. Our partnership engages an international multi-stakeholder ecosystem with entities across transport sector associations, knowledge and academia, governments, multilateral organizations, NGOs, philanthropy, and industry. So we really cover a lot of different, all different types of actors. And then also we have a large community of world-class experts and change makers. The background of why we talk about electrification of transport is that we need to decrease the dependency on fossil fuels. There's a strong need to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, and we need to avoid strong or extreme negative impacts of climate change. The first way, or like the first enabling factor to do so, is set by countries and regions, and also by local governments who phase out fossil fuel vehicles. For example, like put a ban on the sales of diesel and gasoline vehicles. We at Slowcat, we track trends and targets, and we also just released an updated version. So at the URL at the bottom, you can actually find more information and really details for every country. On the right figure, you can see like national and subnational entities with targets of phasing out the sales of diesel and gasoline cars. Now, there are like 10 million electric cars on the roads and maybe close to 300 million electric 2- and 3-wheelers on the road. But there are also like more than 600,000 electric buses in operation in over 400 cities. The majority of them are still in China, but we see more and more cities procuring buses in more cities around the world and improving the service quality. The main reason is actually the total cost of ownership, so like maintenance, purchase, and the long-term cost of buses, of electric buses, is already very comparable and very competitive to conventional buses in some settings, and also depending on subsidies and so on, and what kind of external costs you include in your calculations. But still, it's important to see there's one of like electric buses are like one of many key opportunities for e-mobility in Asia. Like we have 2- and 3-wheelers as a low-hanging fruit. Also, you have, for example, like freight transport, which represents 40% of emissions and should be electrified as well as quickly as possible. And if you combine all of it with renewable energy, you're actually maximizing the benefits of e-mobility. So that's all from my side. I hope it helped you to introduce you the topic. And now I will pass the floor to our first speaker, Ruhan Shailesh Modi, advisor at TUMI-Volt GIZ. He's a regulatory and policy expert working with GIZ on the topics of renewable energy and e-mobility. With the global project TUMI-Volt, Urban Mobility from Renewable Energies, he's on an ambitious journey to facilitate the promotion of 100,000 electric buses by 2025. And he will introduce to us the TUMI e-bus mission. So, floor to you.
Thank you very much, Nicola, for your kind introduction, and thank you for the opportunity, Asia Leads Partnership. Could I have my presentation, please? Because I cannot share my screen.
No, I have given the control to you.
Okay. Sorry, it doesn't, yeah. All right. So thank you again, Nicola, thank you, Asia Leads Partnership. Today I'll be presenting on TUMI e-bus mission. And the presentation is about, I'm not sure it's running itself, but yes, I'll continue. The presentation is about a global initiative called TUMI e-bus mission, where the aim of presentation is to give you an overview and also an opportunity for the Asian cities to be a part of it. So how do we do it and what do we have to offer? Let's go through it. And yes, so TUMI eBus mission is a global initiative. Like I said, it's a global project which was launched at the Climate Act, Act initiative, which is action towards climate-friendly transport at the UNSG summit in September 2019. It is one of the 12 critical initiatives which was launched during the UNSG summit, and it is being implemented by 6 core institutions in coalition, which include C40 cities, GIZ, ICLE, ITDP, UITP, and World Resource Institute. This initiative is being supported financially by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. So what are the main objectives of the initiative? The first objective is to support 20 deep dive cities at a deep technical level to promote the electric buses. And out of these 20 cities, 7 cities happens to be in Asia. Which are the cities we'll be looking forward in the slides to come. Second main objective is to develop a Menti-city network, wherein the objective is that each of the 20 deep dive cities will be mentoring around 5 cities per year until 2025. And will be sharing their best practices, their experiences, or a peer-to-peer learning platform, and even in bilateral meetings. The aim is to develop in the short term 100 cities network until November 2022 and around 500 plus cities until 2025. And one of the main objectives is to ensure procurement readiness of 100,000 e-buses by 2025 in these 20 deep dive cities plus the 500 plus inspired or the Menti cities. So how do we do it? Like I said, there are 2 main cities in which we aim to work. The first one is deep dive cities, where firstly, we will aim to develop a robust coalition of public and private sector partners at city level, which will be called the city specific sub-coalitions. And these will be the core group within these cities who will be working towards electrification of the public fleets. Secondly, we also aim to develop, since it's a global initiative and these cities lie across Latin America, Brazil, Africa, and Asia, we aim to develop a robust coalition of public and private sector partners in energy industry, in private sectors, for example, the OEMs of buses, charging infrastructure, digital service providers, and financing institutions to support this initiative and to support the cities as they move forward in their journey towards electrification. Once the cities are identified, the coalitions are developed, we aim to work in the 20 deep dive cities at a deep technical level, wherein first point will be to develop ambitious, time-bound, and achievable target for these 20 deep dive cities. And post the target development, we'll be working to develop and work on a tailored technical assistance plan for these cities to achieve the developed targets. The third main step, which is also for, or the work package, I would say, for the TUMI eBus mission, which is mainly around scaling and mainly for the Menti cities, is we'll be recruiting the first cohort of Menti cities. Like I said, until November 2022, we aim to develop a network of 100 cities, Menti cities. We'll be developing a global mentorship program guidebook for supporting the cities, and a global knowledge products around the topics of e-bus planning, procurement, and operations will be developed for the Menti cities. So which are these 20 deep dive cities? I hope you can see on the screen. And out of this, the 7 cities, namely Delhi, Chennai, Mumbai, Bengaluru, Ahmedabad, Hanoi, and Jakarta are the 7 cities on which we'll be working in the Asia region. So what's in there for the deep dive cities? I think it's quite my slides that they will receive firstly a detailed technical assistance plan and support, and to achieve their set target, and also a long-term e-bus adoption roadmap, which will support them in full electrification of the public transport. However, the deep dive cities will also commit to act as a mentor to the mentee cities and disseminate their good practices and experiences at regional, global, and even at a national level. And how do we work on developing this mentee city network? So the first aim for us will be to develop the regional networks, that is mentee city network, Latin America, Brazil, Africa, mentee city network India, and mentee city network Southeast Asia. Then we will be connecting all these independent networks into a global knowledge platform, wherein a portal will be developed to connect all these mentee cities and the deep dive cities. And this platform will be given for an active exchange between the different cities. This global knowledge platform will encourage peer-to-peer learning, as well as the global knowledge products around the key topics like procurement of e-buses, financing of e-buses, monitoring of the e-bus operations, charging infrastructure, and digitization will be uploaded onto this portal for the cities. And as a next step for the committed cities who have the short-term goals ready, we will onboard a pool of regional experts, which will support these cities with short-term targets for ad hoc technical as well as legal support, which they may require for running a tender process for their electric bus procurement targets. So, to sum up what's in there for the mentee cities, they get a peer-to-peer learning platform. The mentee cities will get access to the knowledge, global knowledge products. And for the focus or for the committed cities with short-term goals, they'll get access to regional and national training programs and access to regional pool of experts. So if you or your cities are interested to join this mentee program, I'll encourage you to write us at this email address, and we would be happy to get back to you as we work towards this mentee city program in the next 2 to 3 months. Thank you. That's all from my side, and I'll be happy to take any questions later at the end of the session through the moderation by Nicola.
Great, thank you very much. It's a very interesting project, and I hope that many Asian cities will take up this invitation and reach out to you and implement more electric buses. Actually, in the chat, there's already some interest from Vietnam who would like to hear more about the e-bus in Hanoi. So yeah, please connect to this person as well. Yeah, thanks a lot. So now to the second speaker of the session, Indradip Mitra, lead of the NDC Transport Initiative for Asia at GIZ. Indradip is also the lead for e-mobility-related activities under the Indo-German Energy Program and coordinates the India component of the NDC Transport Initiative for Asia, or NDC-TIA in short. He will talk more about how actually to decarbonize the transport sector in Asia. So the floor is open for you.
Thank you, Nicola. Good afternoon, all from Delhi. I don't know how to go to the next slide. Is this control with me, or?
I can move it for you if you want.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So after my colleague Rohan, this is also another project funded by German government. In this case, it's a German Ministry of Environment, BMU. And this is a regional program addressing Asia. We will go through that. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So if you see, transforming transport is fundamental in terms of emission in this case. We are talking in this slide, the left side and the right side. You see it's almost 1/4 of the overall emission is coming from transport. And particularly in Asia, about 25% at the moment is the contribution from the Asian countries, and which is quite high. And if you see the right side picture, it's from ITF's report Outlook. You'll see for the projection, it goes manifold. The question is, can we control it? Can we break the trend? Otherwise, it's alarmingly high, the share of freight transport and road transport in terms of passenger will be manifold. Can you go to the next slide, please? So in this context, German Ministry for Environment funded one project, it's a regional project addressing the transport and connection with the NDCs for the emission or the decarbonization issues. And there, the countries in Asia would be working on comprehensive strategies to decarbonize transport. Here, we are talking about 3 countries in particular focus: China, India, and Vietnam. However, there is another work component for the other Asian countries. So the components of these particular 3 countries, which will be in more detailed focus, are classified into 2 sections. One is identification of the pathways, modeling and calculations for long-term strategies. And also the second point is fostering the key actions in more micro concrete actions, particularly focused on e-mobility. Next slide, please. Another important element of this project is that the formation of the Council for Decarbonizing Transport in Asia. The YouTube link is also given in the bottom of it. There are at the moment 14 very distinguished council members coming across Asian countries, specialists for various specific segments of transport. The main objective of this is to visualize change, shift the narrative, and engage with leaders. Very soon in 2022, the Council will publish a flagship report. The work is already in progress. It started a few months back already. Next slide, please. Yeah, here you could see that the shifting gears towards zero carbon sustainable transport has multiple dimensions. In this slide, only 6 of them are depicted, and each are covering into subsections of the topics. These are well known in general, but it's very easy to say than to actually implement mitigation actions. Next slide, please. So one of these is actually accelerating electrification of renewable energy, which is one of the very key elements of sustainable transport in terms of e-mobility, if it's really in true sense clean. Next slide, please. Here we have jotted down a couple of examples from China, India, and Vietnam. For instance, if you see in the Chinese point of view, study on TCO of electric trucks, study on electric bus system optimization, pilot project on electric bus network optimization, and pilot project on temporal loading zones for electric freight vehicles. On the other hand, if you go to the right side of the Vietnam, so here a national e-mobility strategy under development, pilot implementation is happening, cost benefit analysis and power demand analysis of e-mobility development going on, and so on and so forth. Now, in India section also, where we are responsible to do the activities, we are also working for supporting the state government of Delhi for developing a public and private electric mobility charging network. We have also established one digital library on green mobility. We are conducting simulation-based study to evaluate the effects of smart charging strategies and afterwards to follow up with the relevant regulators to mandate smart charging or managed charging. And we are also focusing on a power market reform to enable how the cross linkages between renewable energy ambition could be directly coupled with the green and sustainable mobility ambition in forms of e-mobility. Now, what I have not said is that this project is not only from GIZ, it's a large consortium. There are total 7 consortium. In fact, Nicola is also working for this project from SLOCAT. The consortium partners are GIZ being the lead of this, but we have WRI, we have Agora, we have SLOCAT, we have ITF, we have REN21, we have ICCT. The partners are not equally distributed in each country. For instance, for India components, SLOCAT is not working, but they are working in other components. It's already over 1 year of existence. We have progressed despite the COVID-related challenges that we faced. And I think you might be interested to stay tuned with us and check the websites, and a lot of products will also be developed under this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the insights on the NDC TIA. Yeah, here your contact information. So please encourage again the audience to put in any questions in the Q&A or into the chat box, and we will then get back to your questions at the end of the session. The next speaker I would like to invite now is Glinda Batan-Batarina, Deputy Executive Director at Clean Air Asia. She's also actually a board member of the SLOCAT Partnership, and also, as we just heard, she's a member of the Council for Decarbonizing Transport in Asia. She's a lawyer with over 20 years of experience in policy development for clean air, sustainable transport, and climate change mitigation. So, and yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nicola, and to the organizers of the Asia LEDS Forum 2021. I'm going to speak on the policies and programs in public transport which promote clean air, focusing on case studies in Asia. So for those of you who don't know Clean Air Asia, we are a 20-year-old international non-government organization that is based in Manila, and we have been working in this region, including in our offices in Beijing and in New Delhi, and 6 country networks to inform stakeholders on the impacts of air pollution, for air quality and climate change mitigation and sustainable transport, and improving policy. And in my next slide, the real reason for, one of the main reasons why cities shift to electric mobility is because of the need to clean the air. Based on a study that we have done, more than 90% of Asian cities do not meet WHO annual air quality guidelines. And in this next slide, I won't go into detail, but it just states that traffic or motor vehicles are a significant source of air pollution in many of our cities in Asia. And this has resulted in Asia really bearing the burden of disease and mortality from air pollution. And in my presentation, I'm going to speak of case studies of electric mobility, the shift to electric vehicle use in the public transport sector. And of course, this story is not going to be complete if we don't speak of the example in Shenzhen. So the slide seems to be stuck. There you go. So this is the control center in Shenzhen, where they are able to track 16,000 e-buses and 22,000 e-taxis. And each of these points actually are buses or taxis, and they're able to see the vehicle utilization rate and the energy efficiency of each of these buses. So by end of 2017, Shenzhen announced that its close to 17,000 buses had become electric, and it is the largest electric bus fleet in the world and the first 100% electric bus fleet. So previously, diesel buses in Shenzhen represented about half, actually about 0.5 of the total city vehicle fleet, but they comprise 20% of the city transport emissions. So switching to electric buses was a solution to reduce air pollutant emissions from the buses. Now, according to studies and such as this World Resources Institute article, there were 4 tactics which helped Shenzhen to cost effectively electrify its buses. First is that there were national and local subsidies which allowed the city to make the transition. And then second is that in order to reduce their upfront investments, they went for a leasing arrangement with the bus manufacturers. And thirdly, they attribute success to the optimized charging and operations. So they chose a type of bus that can run a full day on 250 kilometers of driving, only with 5 hours of charging at night. And they have a high charger to e-bus ratio of 1:3 along the bus route. And to help with the cost of operations, they open up the charging facilities to private vehicles. And charging is also done at night when the electricity costs are low. They were able to secure lifetime warranty of batteries from the bus manufacturers. And another key aspect or success factor is the collaborative environment during the transition. So they had an ecosystem which included government agencies, national and local, the private sector, and financing institutions working together. Because of this shift to electric buses, Shenzhen met its air quality goals in 2016 and 2017. And so 12 million people, that's the population of Shenzhen, now benefit from clean air. And the bus operator also benefited from an increase in its ridership, which was already going down. Because of the shift, about 2.4% increase resulted. Now, going to another part of the world is an example in Kolkata. I hope that yes. So in Kolkata, diesel buses comprise 33% of PM emissions, and they had 1,500 plus diesel buses running. And the government of India implemented the FAME, or the Faster Adoption and Manufacturing of Electric Vehicles program, in 2019, which promoted electric vehicles, including providing support to charging infrastructure. So the government provided a budget of about $500 million for deployment of more than 7,000 e-buses. And at that time, the government of West Bengal already had policy measures to introduce electric mobility, and it aims to shift fully to e-buses by 2030. Some of the success factors include the well-planned charging station placement and operation scheme. So they have a mix of slow and fast chargers in existing bus depots. And the reasons for the shift to e-bus include reduction of air pollution, and also that they actually found that the e-buses were more cost competitive over diesel buses. So for this effort, Kolkata won the C40 Cities Bloomberg Philanthropies Award. And other success factors include the national and local subsidies. So about 60% of the costs came from the central government. 40% from the state government. And the government of West Bengal, because it wants to increase the number of e-buses, has announced tax incentives and a subsidy scheme to attract investors. Some of the challenges that they face include the location of new chargers to accommodate more buses. And in the beginning, there was frequent tripping of the chargers and grid synchronization issues, but these were rectified through software adjustments. And another challenge is really securing renewable energy supply for charging of the electric buses. Now, moving to another part of Asia, Southeast Asia, I give an example of Pasig City in Metro Manila, Philippines. Now, this is a different example because the electric vehicles here are used for parcel and for delivery of documents and small freight. So in a project supported by UNEP and implemented by Clean Air Asia, TailG, an electric vehicle manufacturer, donated 30 electric 2- and 3-wheelers for use in the city's government delivery system called PhilPost. And in this case study, some of the challenges in the operations of the electric vehicles were that there were unclear national regulations on which roads the electric 3-wheelers and 2-wheelers are allowed to run on or to ply. And charging infrastructure is not really available in the city for long distances. While these are small vehicles and they can be charged at the facility at PhilPost, if they would run long distances, then they would need to have charging readily available. And one very interesting challenge is that the employees of the Philippine Postal Corporation needed some convincing because in the existing scheme, they were using their gasoline run motorcycles for which they received a fuel subsidy in addition to their salaries. So convincing them to give up the subsidy in exchange for using electric vehicles which no longer run on fossil fuels was also one of the challenges. Now, opportunities for expansion include that the city, Pasig City, has now created what we believe is the first ever city-level electric vehicle task force in the Philippines to map out the city's electric dreams. So this is my last slide, and I provide references to all of the material on these case studies in my last slide. Thank you, and looking forward to engaging you in the open forum.
Thank you very much, Glinda, for this very interesting case studies. It's great to see Shenzhen, Kolkata, and Pasig. Especially, I enjoyed Pasig for the freight and logistics example. Thank you very much again. And now to our fourth speaker. We are very well on time, so thanks a lot also for keeping time of the speakers so far. Now, the fourth speaker is Dr. Sanjini Nanayakara, staff scientist at NREL, who's also project lead for the Let's GP and USAID NREL partnership. She has overseen NREL's delivery of technical assistance in both Asia and Latin America and the Caribbean. And she's supporting the Let's GP electric and clean mobility communities of practice. She will introduce to us the leadership group and the benefits of transitioning towards the net zero pathways. So yeah, Sanjini, up to you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Nicola, for the introduction. So I would like to first start by thanking the Asia Let's Partnership for the opportunity to speak here today at this session. And so my name is Sanjini Nanayakara, and I'm a project lead at the National Renewable Energy Lab in the US. And today I'm going to talk to you about a new Let's GP initiative, the Asia Clean Mobility High Ambition Leadership Group, where the goal is to enable our member countries to make progress towards net zero transport systems. This is a highly collaborative group with SLOCAT and the Asia-led partnership also as implementing partners. Oh, thank you. And so, as we have heard from many speakers earlier today and from previous sessions as well, there are many drivers for low emission transport systems, and each country will have its own goals and objectives on this pathway. But there are a few common themes that are recurring, particularly for the Asia Pacific region. And one of the primary goals is to reduce emissions. But there's also a need to find ways to achieve economic growth along with the addition of this low carbon transport technologies. Now, these goals have been further compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic, with some countries and segments of the population being hit harder. And so not only must we achieve economic growth, we must also find ways to recover and include equitable practices in our goals for achieving job growth. So also keeping in mind that with many fast-growing, highly urbanized cities, air quality and health remains a very high concern in the region. And you heard this clearly stated from our previous speaker from Clean Air Asia as well. And so if you think about it, even if we and think about the traffic and the congestion in the some of the highly urbanized Asian cities. So even if we converted every internal combustion engine vehicle into an electric vehicle, traffic congestion will not be solved. This means we really need to think about better ways to move people than always relying on our personal vehicles. And finally, the energy component is also a very strong concern. And in some countries, there are an abundance of renewable energy resources such as hydropower, and these countries could truly achieve clean transport systems as their energy is also from a clean renewable source. And this would also lead to energy independence. So as you can see, it's not possible to decarbonize, or it's not always possible to think about decarbonizing the transport sector as a silo, as there are many deep connections to other areas of the economy as well, specifically jobs and growth, energy, the built environment, and of course, people. If I could please, thank you. And I want to highlight this recent publication from the Hewlett Foundation, which released a net zero emissions transport strategy that also showed additional benefits here. And as you can see, the link is also in the slides for you to pick up and read. And in their analysis and their projections, there's so many avoided deaths that are beneficial, new jobs, and savings from the cost of climate change related damages. And if you look at their document further, there are key global challenges or gaps to achieving net zero transport systems. And those proposed challenges were the lack of ambitious regulations, lack of and an abundance presence of charging infrastructure, and incentives to create increased demands. So if I may request, next slide, please. Thank you. So how can we help countries achieve their clean and net zero transport goals in accordance with their own local priorities? At the Low Emissions Development Strategies Global Partnership, or the LESGP, which was launched in 2010, we are a global accelerator of knowledge, and our goal is to enable collaboration, ambitious climate action through peer learning and innovation at the global scale, the regional scale, as well as locally through targeted peer learning activities, workshops, capacity building activities, and of course, technical support for accelerated deployment as well. And so how do we work within our LESGP program? Next slide, please. In our program, we work through our regional platforms. So we have regional platforms in Africa, Asia, and the Latin America and the Caribbean region. And we help local stakeholders collaborate with their neighboring countries, assisting them in figuring out how best to create ambitious climate action plans through peer learning and technical support. And so what we also have is within these regions, we have established multiple member-driven communities of practice that bring together like-minded stakeholders from local governments and municipalities that are seeking to advance specific technical areas. So if you look at some of the examples in these slides, the topics could be mini-grids, clean mobility, or bioenergy. And so this brings us to the Clean Asia Clean Mobility High Ambition Leadership Group. Next slide, please. And this group was formed very recently. We launched this program this year in 2021, where we invited high-level officials from Asian countries to come together at a roundtable discussion to discuss their goals and challenges. And the members within this group will receive support to achieve or to strengthen their net zero pathways. And we hope to grow the support and activities within this group over the coming years. And this group is supported currently by the US Department of State, USAID, and we are working very closely with the NDC TIA program as well, which we heard about from one of our previous speakers. And next slide, please. So what is our vision for this group? The vision for this group is to really help these countries in the Asia Pacific region to accelerate deployment and achieve their own visions of what net zero transport systems might look like in their own countries through integrated and inclusive solutions. Next slide, please. Our objectives are to enable these countries, work with them and support them to develop shared goals and visions, either as an individual country or as a region, to develop or strengthen pathways. Some countries already have pathways to net zero transport systems, and some countries may need to start with designing their own pathways. And also to implement actions, supporting them to implement actions that help them achieve their goals. Next slide, please. And support for this group and the members in this group can come in many forms. What's here are a few examples ranging from advisory support to and technical support and subject matter experts helping these countries to overcome some of their challenges. But these are not written in stone, as our goal is to always help our member countries work the way they want, whatever works best for these countries. Thank you. Next slide, please. And so, as I mentioned, we launched this group this year, and in our work stream for this year, we have completed the first roundtable discussion. And right now we are currently working with countries, member countries, going through bilateral meetings, and currently we're building a project pipeline where we are starting to think about quick turnaround topics, support, as well as mid to long-term priority topics as well. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned before, this is a very collaborative project, and the people that you are seeing here are the project leads. And if you have any questions, the leads are Angela Enrique and Chris Decky from SLOCAT, Ashish Rao Gopad from the Asia Let's Partnership, and myself. So feel free to contact us at any time with any questions, and we look forward to finding ways to working with you in the future. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for this very insightful presentation, and for really showing how complex it is, but how all transport and other sectors have to work together in order to decarbonize and not only decarbonize but solve also many other issues that we are facing. So thank you very much. Now we are getting towards the country perspective to see how actually, now on the ground in the country, the situation looks like and what is being done in terms on to lower emissions and to move towards the net zero pathway. I invite Saratan Jari Manoharan, who is the Deputy Director at the Air Resources Management and National Ozone Unit at the Ministry of Environment in Sri Lanka. And she's been involved in many clean air initiatives in the country and has really helped to put transport on the agenda. So yeah, over to you.
Thank you. I think I'm audible, right? Yeah, okay. Good evening, everyone. And good afternoon, yeah. So I will be speaking today on moving ahead on net zero low emission pathways with a focus on e-mobility, especially in Sri Lanka. So the content of my presentation will be on the status of the transport sector in Sri Lanka, why public transport electrification is required, the drivers of EV adoption, which is more focused on Sri Lanka, barriers for adapting e-mobility and the readiness of e-mobility in Sri Lanka, the present status of e-mobility, and the key consideration for a strategic action plan that is being formulated now. So the status of transport sector in Sri Lanka is the transport sector nearly contributes to 69% of the consumption of oil and petroleum products, and 16% of the GHG emissions are due to the transport sector. So our vehicle imports were worth nearly $817 million in 2019, and the expenditure on petroleum products was $3,887 million. Apart from all these, we are said to be having the highest share of hybrid vehicles. Next slide, please. Yeah, the graphs in this slide will explain you what I have said clearly. Yeah, next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so why do we need public transport electrification is because the picture speaks more than the words. So the picture in the right-hand side of the slide explains it well. But then private vehicles and the fossil fuel-driven transport is unsustainable, as every one of us knew, and it widely contributes to air pollution and climate change. The traffic congestion and increased commuting time, which is very evident in the city of Colombo, and the vehicle cause deaths and injuries, which is also very evident in most of the Asian countries, and the inefficient public transport, which make people to shift towards private vehicles. And all these things will contribute to losing productivity, and it will be a huge loss to the economy. Apart from everything, I think we should focus more on leaving no one behind. The next slide, please. So the drivers, when you see the drivers of EV adoption, especially for Asian countries, first thing is the international, regional, and national commitments. And the second thing is the broader and more ambitious policy portfolios to accelerate the transition. Main policy drivers, which is done by many other countries, are significant fiscal incentives, gradual tightening of fuel economy and tailpipe emission standards, convenient and affordable publicly accessible chargers, and full phase out of internal combustion engine vehicles. Next slide, please. With regard to Sri Lanka, and most of our countries have these barriers for adapting e-mobility. The first thing is informational barriers. Lack of awareness and the range anxiety we have, especially in Asian countries. And then the economical barriers such as high upfront EV cost and the business viability issues, regulatory barriers such as characterization of EV charging activities, tariff-related issues, and the technical barriers, chargers, standards, and protocol issues. We don't have a universal charging ports, and then grid stability issues, and also the battery performance issues. For example, in Sri Lanka, most of the electric vehicles are reconditioned. So then the battery performance issue is a key problem. Next slide, please. So when we see the status of e-mobility in Sri Lanka, at present, we have over 5,400 electric cars, 2,300 electric bikes, and over 40,000 hybrid vehicles which are used in Sri Lanka. And 90% of these vehicles are using lithium-ion batteries. So the country imports its vehicles parts from other countries and does not have an existing manufacturing or supplying infrastructure. Apart from all these things, there has been an increase in the amount of hybrid and electric vehicles in the country due to a special tax structure introduced for hybrid vehicles since 2011, and tax is zero for electric vehicles since in 2014. That shows the increase. However, 90% of the cars that were used, that were like, as I have already mentioned, they were reconditioned vehicles and which require battery replacement within a few years of import, and there are no e-battery importers in Sri Lanka. So then there are some issues with importation of batteries and disposal, end of life, everything. So there is no formal method available in Sri Lanka for recycling reused battery and other parts. So these are some key concerns with regard to the status of e-mobility in Sri Lanka. The next slide, please. So how far we are ready for the shift to e-mobility from ICE in Sri Lanka? When it comes to the presence of e-buses, trolleys, hybrid buses or e-vehicles, we have a very few in number, and we have a charging infrastructure that needs to be strengthened. And then when it comes to the subsidy of electric mobility, we have to some extent, but I think they need to be revised. And then we have some plans, targets, and procurement plans for electric vehicles, but still we don't have a electric vehicle policy. And also with regard to the manufacturing, battery supplies and all, still we don't have any other initiatives taken so far. The next slide, please. So this is the timeline of the status of electric mobility in Sri Lanka. So it starts with the National Policy on Transport in 2009, which encourages the use of new technology such as hybrid vehicles and also provides tax rebates. So then down the timeline, we had different policies, different action, country policy documents mentioning about e-mobility. And also we had several other initiatives. And finally, in 2021, we have got the initial project preparation grant from JEF on an e-mobility with a piloting of few initiatives in the public transport. And also we have revised our NDCs with a dedicated sector for transport, which also focuses on e-mobility. And we have got GGGI support on a feasibility study for intelligent transport systems in the public transport with special focus on Colombo City, which also focus more on the electric mobility aspect of it. And then a cabinet approval was sought recently to promote the use of electric vehicles in Sri Lanka, which will enable the expert committee to develop a strategic action plan. So the strategic action plan is being developed, and the key considerations for the strategic action plan is, first is the geography, like where we should be implementing it. And then the second one is the modes of transport, to which modes of transport it is viable, and the energy mix, manufacturing facilities, charging infrastructure, the end of life of all the components, and employment opportunities, and more importantly, the funding. Apart from all these things, we would like to focus more on awareness and communication to enable the general public to make smart and sustainable choices, and research and development for informed decision making. So this is the state of e-mobility in Sri Lanka. And I hope if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask or contact me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Shah, yeah, I forgot to tell you. Yeah.
Okay, but thank you very much. It was very, very interesting presentation. And actually, I enjoyed it very much. They said leaving no one behind, and you also shows many challenges that we have still in Sri Lanka. And most important, I think, you're very very humble and very underestimating kind of, you were saying that NDC was revised with adding a little bit on e-mobility, but even like beyond e-mobility, the Sri Lanka's new NDC is really very rich in transport measures. Like, so I encourage all attendees, please Google it, take a look at Sri Lanka's new NDC. The updated NDC is it's a full page with just measures on transport, covering the avoid, shift, and improve framework, and a lot of the whole facet and very comprehensive approach towards low carbon sustainable transport. Thank you very much. Now we get to the last speaker on our agenda today, who is Ashish Rao Gapade, Deputy Director at ICLEI South Asia, and also part of the ALP Secretariat. And as you can see, he's involved in many of these councils and many of these initiatives that have been introduced today. So over to you.
Thank you, Nicola, and great presentation, Sartanjali Madam. So this is a very short presentation telling you a little bit about, I hope I'm audible, right? It's a very short presentation talking a little bit about the community of practice focusing on clean mobility. The community of practice on clean mobility is part of the Asia-LEDS partnership. We have a number of communities existing, and one of them, a very interesting one, happens to be the COP that focuses on clean mobility. Now, this community of practice is facilitated by the Asia-LEDS Partnership Secretariat, organized and handled by ICLEI. It is steered by the Transport Working Group. A little bit was talked about this by Dr. Sanjini in her presentation. And as a group, as a community, we bring together over 60 experts, practitioners, country representatives, and organizations that are interested or involved in clean mobility. The kind of activities that we are undertaking within the community of practice is including providing online learning sessions with subject matter experts, organizing compilation of good practices, good lessons, or success stories for exchange within the community, sharing of tools or resource materials and new concepts that could benefit member countries, no-cost technical assistance to the countries on the areas of focus. And in a pre-COVID time, we would offer in-person, very engaging workshops for peer learning and networking. As of now, most of these are online as the current ALP forum itself, but we are looking forward to a time that we will again start having in-person workshops and engaging interactions on what are the issues, what are the opportunities, and how we can address them, learning from each other and moving forward in the Asian region. Some of the ongoing activities as of now, the first one, I think I would like to talk about the Asia Clean Mobility High Ambition Leadership Group, also talked about by Dr. Sanjini. This is something that is coming together this year, and we are hoping to work with countries in the region on furthering their ambitions, their agendas, addressing clean mobility within the specific context, national context. Together with this, we are also providing support to Chiang Mai City, focusing on improving ridership in buses. There's an ongoing study that is documenting learnings and responses from countries on a post-COVID recovery, focusing on mobility. Next, please. Few activities that have been conducted in the past include support through the Climate Help Desk, which includes, for example, work done with the government of Bhutan, focusing on the city of Thimphu, helping them think about the public transport and how this could be improved and made clean in coming time. We've also worked with the Transport Ministry of Sri Lanka, helping them think through a framework for the National Clean Electric Mobility Policy, and these interactions are ongoing. We are hoping to continue to engage. Next, please. So this is in short the kind of things that we've been doing as part of the COP, but if we want to continue, I think it would be great if a number of you who've joined the sessions today, the morning session and the current session, would like to join the Clean Mobility Community of Practice. You could write to us, and the survey that we are documenting of experiences from countries on addressing COVID and post-COVID recovery for the transport sector, that's another thing that would be great to hear from you on. You could write to us, you could email us, and we could be in touch, and we could see how we could facilitate action and provide support in your regions addressing the issues or partnering in the opportunities that are existing. So I stop here. I think this is a short presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Handing it back to Nicola. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, before we come to the Q&A session, I was informed that Sudhendu Sinha, advisor at NITI Aayog and the government of India, has joined the session as well, and we would like to invite him for a couple of few words, very, very brief intervention on today's topic and what he thinks about the different announcements that have been made on the initiatives and what he has heard in this session. If you're here, if you can hear me. Hello, can Sudhendu
able to get me, please?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could please share a couple of thoughts about today's session, it would be very much appreciated before we get to the Q&A.
Now I think I am visible as well as audible, please. Okay, thanks a lot. So really thanks to all the participants. I was listening since last almost close to 45 minutes, and great initiatives being taken all around. As I mentioned last time when we had met, that we have re-strategized our FAME scheme, which is the national scheme for taking electric mobility forward, faster adoption of and manufacturing of electric vehicles. The result of this re-strategizing initiative is phenomenal, in the sense that before that, there was hardly a traction. Now I see that traction is gradually visible, definitely in the area of two-wheeler segment to start with. Now in three-wheelers also, we have decided to aggregate the demands. In the two-wheeler, the intervention was very simple, very plain, that we increased the incentive. In three-wheeler stream, we have aggregated the demand. We have identified one of our own subsidiary units of the government, which is working with, which is under the aegis of Ministry of Power, to aggregate the demand and thus order number of three-wheelers in bulk. So we have decided that almost 300,000 of three-wheelers, they will be supported through this process of aggregation. And the idea behind is that once we aggregate and give the bulk demand order, in that case, the prices fall down. That has got a bearing on the upfront cost and it becomes affordable. So basically, it is the idea is for the price discovery, and this is going on. For the buses, we have identified 9 cities where the population is 4 million plus. And we will be intervening directly in these 9 cities. And the buses, those which are either end of life or those which the state government has agreed to shift them to other locations, they will simply be phased out. They will be replaced by the new fleet. The idea is that if we can create such 9 lighthouse cities, it will have a snowball effect on the other cities also. But yes, what I am telling now, this I have already told earlier. The new initiative is that the PLI scheme that for manufacturing of advanced chemistry cell that is already operational. We have prepared our bid document, and we do expect that by the end of this year, or maybe very early beginning of this year, next year, we should be able to point out, identify that which will be the manufacturing facilities that will be creating their own manufacturing base in India for advanced chemistry cells. And we will be supporting them, we will be incentivizing them, we will be facilitating them with all the trunk and subsidiary infrastructure plus financial incentives. Because the idea is very simple, that if an OEM is also the manufacturer of advanced chemistry cell, or if an OEM can have a very intense relationship agreement with another facility that is making advanced chemistry cell, that they would decide the price of the vehicle segment. So that would be the game changer. In addition to that, the another initiative is that in the charging infrastructure, the gradual realization is that it has to be taken as a mass movement to start with in those 9 cities and then subsequently to the other locations. How do we go about it? Instead of charging stations, it is time that we come out with charging points. So practically in all the residential areas, in your office complexes, parking slots, whichever electric pole is available, we are attempting to have a kind of engagement with the distribution companies that they should be providing as the supply, and so that the EVSE can be installed on it with multiple plug points, and from there the 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers can instantly be charged, removing all the range anxiety and supporting its adoption. Now that will be the next great thing that we will be pulling off in, say, in a time span of 4 months or maybe at best 6 months.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to keep it rather brief, and that we can get some more insights from the other speakers.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. It's very insightful. And actually, you answered already some of the questions that we had around the infrastructure, the lack of infrastructure, and it's actually really great insights and a good approach of thinking about more like the charging points and this kind of
yes.
Approach. Thank you very much for your insights. So now, to end, we received actually quite a lot of questions from the audience and the attendees. So thanks a lot for very active engagement. And also I see Rohan from JZ already answered many of the questions, but still, actually, Rohan, I would like to invite you. Maybe there were like this question about the asset management of e-buses, as well as kind of the policy and regulatory environment supporting greater uptake of EVs. I know that you already answered them in writing, but I would very much invite you maybe please summarize your answer for anybody who didn't read it, and maybe just briefly your main points of your answers. Thank you.
Yes, I thank you, Nicola, for the opportunity again. And yes, like I said, there are many players which had already evolved into the sector. For example, in my answer, I also gave an example of Zenobe Energy in United Kingdom, who is providing end-to-end solutions when it comes not just for the charging infrastructure, batteries, but also the end-of-life management of the batteries which come out at the end of the service life for the batteries in these in public transport operations. Similarly, we can also see in some of the examples in Chinese cities where e-bus OEMs who are providing the battery as a service model, they are taking back the batteries at the end of the service life. So I believe it's something to do with the business model we select as or the cities select to operate. And if there are good strategies decided at before the procurement process at the business model level, then the end of life management could be taken in a very could be taken care of in a very good way. And the examples are already out. I had also shared few links into my answer, so I would encourage all to go through that links, go through the webinars. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for the quick answer. And now I would like to direct the next question to Glinda. From the audience, we received a question about kind of how sustainable actually e-mobility is, and you know, in terms of the life cycle assessment. Also, the question was framed around, you know, considering the major dependent on thermal power plant grid and so on, like in India and other countries. So if you would like to please share your insights on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. We do need to really be mindful that if we are to optimize the decarbonization of transport through electrifying vehicles, we should also really consider the source of the electricity, whether the power generating source is run by still the fossil fuel sources of coal and natural gas, or whether the source of power is from renewable sources. And one way of assessing this is by looking at the grid emission factors of our existing grids. While we know that moving to electric mobility will mean significant reduction in exposure of our people, especially in dense cities, exposure from air pollutants, we should remember that we don't want to be transferring the pollution from the cities to the rural areas where the coal-fired power plants may be located. So there are equity and climate justice reasons for this. And therefore, looking at a life cycle assessment of our entire system, including the energy source and, of course, electric mobility is really needed.
Great, thank you very much. Now, I would like to combine the next two questions, not so much because they're related, but also because I feel like the earlier presentation about Sri Lanka's situation and Sri Lanka's challenges has touched up on these topics, and I think it's the best, and maybe also for Saratan Jali to answer them. So from Abu Bakr, we received a question about how to tackle the obstacle of limited batteries on the market and underdeveloped infrastructure, as well as from Chris Shinapu, we received a question about what are some suggestions to address the waste issue generated by batteries. So yeah, we would like to hear about Sri Lanka's inputs here. And I think you're still muted. You need to unmute.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, in the context of Sri Lanka, earlier we had the same HS code for all the batteries, so that the tax component will not be like different. It's the same for all the batteries, even the. So then we have suggested for different HS code, and that was implemented. And then the other thing is we could think of encouraging investments for local manufacturing of batteries, and also regarding the underdeveloped infrastructure, we can think of establishing standards and building codes. When we give approval for public infrastructure, then this should be mandatory, kind of, so that the charging infrastructure will be established in many other places. It will be like, there will be more buildings and local infrastructure with the charging facilities. And then regarding the waste generated by batteries, in Sri Lanka, there are a few companies that re-export the used batteries. So maybe we can think of collaborating with them. That is one. And the other thing is we can focus more on the extended user responsibility, maybe on like refunding, have an refundable advance early, and then maybe if the battery is sent through a proper channel after end of life, the money will be refunded. And also we can think of battery swapping handled by a few companies, so that the batteries will not be wasted or just released to the environment, just dumped into the environment. So these are the things we could think of. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We also received a comment from Francis Bridgewater regarding, like, he's showing his interest in EVs applied to the Caribbean islands. And I'm not sure, Sanjini, I believe you're still here with us. And because we in the past also Sanjini, like NREL and SLOCAT and also like ICLEI South Asia, we've been doing workshops on the electrification of mobility on islands. I'm not sure if Sanjini, if you want to briefly maybe touch on this topic, or like just briefly, not so much Caribbean islands, but like the big picture of island electrification and what role it plays, or how much it's different from other electrification.
Yeah, so the island situation is in some ways quite different than a non-island city, I would say, because it's very hard to achieve economies of scale in terms of really scaling up the vehicle modes or the energy. And so you really have to think about, in case of a small island, the renewable energy source and try to maximize under the local conditions. And so the project report that I sent to the person who asked the question was Asia Economic Cooperation funded project that we did on 3 small islands, one of them in Vietnam, the other one was Easter Island, Chile. And we did an analysis on what's the best 4 steps, what are the steps that needs to be taken to even start to thinking about how to bring about clean transportation modes along with renewable energy sources that are very unique to each island setting. So so I would like to bring the attention to that report, and hopefully the information within would answer that question.
Great, thank you very much. We're almost at the end of the session. I just want very briefly, because so many comments around kind of really, how sustainable is e-mobility and so on. So I would like to very briefly ask Intradeep Mitra, maybe to again re-emphasize the message of the NDC-TIA Intradip, if you can briefly kind of share again with us kind of what's the main, or like, how can we really achieve the sustainable decarbonization of transport in Asia? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Before I say about it, just wanted to inform that I have pasted a couple of web links in the chat box. You could find a lot of information there. Also, I would like to acknowledge here that our NDC-TIA project India component, our implementation partner is NITI Aayog. And since Mr. Sudhendu Jyoti Sinha is present in this room, in this event now, it's a nice a token for appreciation that NITI Aayog is actively working with us in this project and really active. So I see there is no one answer to your question. There is not a single solution which will fit all type. So all front we need to go for decarbonization. If you talk about electrification, then this is one of the options. On the energy transformation for transport, we are in that sense, we are not talking about the actually mobility transformation. So because the shared mode and various new types of mobility itself will have also almost 50% of the share for the GHG emission reduction. So there was a study in Agora in Germany for Germany, and it showed for German conditions for the long-term strategy, and approximately 40 to 60% of the reduction of GHG emission from transport would happen only if we focus on the energy transformation for transport. So for the energy transformation as a component, electrification comes one of the major elements into it, but there are other means also. For instance, if you talk about green hydrogen, you talk also about biofuel. Together it will have. So therefore, there is a need for very detailed modeling exercise, keeping in mind all the constraint and economic limitations that we all have. It's a mathematical exercise needed. And we'll be also doing so. Our counterpart, our partners, ITF, ICCT, and we, GIZ, we are to some extent involved in that. We are also calculating long-term situations for India. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So now I will give the floor to Ashish, who will provide some concluding remarks to finish the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you. I think I can hardly say any concluding words. We've had a very interesting session from various participants. I think this has proved the presentations and the interactions that we've had in the session are proof that there is a lot of vibrancy in this focus area of clean mobility. There's interest, there is intent, and there is also action happening on a regular basis across countries, supported through programs internationally and local efforts. So this is really encouraging, and this is really good to see all of these actions coming together at a platform in a session like this. I'd like to go ahead and thank all of you for joining us for this session. Nicola, specifically you for moderating the session very interestingly, making sure that we had interest as we went on from presentation to presentation. In terms of the speakers, I'd like to thank Mr. Rohan Modi from GIZ TUMI Volt, Mr. Indradeep Mitra, GIZ NDC-TIA, Ms. Glinda from the Clean Air Asia, Dr. Sanjini from NREL, Ms. Saratanjali from the government of Sri Lanka. I would also like to thank Sudhendu Sinha sir, who sportingly joined us and shared thoughts on how India is moving ahead, taking actions, furthering the electric and clean mobility goals that we have set for ourselves. So it's been great to have you all share your thoughts. I'd also want to thank all of the participants and partners who've allowed us to have this session so active and engaging. Great to have all of you here. I don't know if we can have a panel that shows the email ID. If you want to write to us, you could reach to Asia-Led's partnership for being involved in our activities, share any thoughts, any questions, and we'll come back to you. Want to mention once again that the session has been recorded, so we have all of the information that was presented available online. If you're interested in a specific presentation, please write to us and we will come back to you. So once again, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the very interesting session.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
We should have a photograph.
Is it possible for the panelists? I don't know if,
Yes.
can we have the if it's possible, if everybody on the panelist side, if we can switch on the cameras once, we'd have a photo as a memory of this session, all of us being together. It'd be great to have a picture.
Yeah. I believe Glinda had to leave a couple of minutes ago,
but the rest of us could still have it then. Thank you.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.